Welcome to Vermontitude, a collaborative effort between Great Eastern Radio, the Brattleboro Reformer, and BCTV to bring you the stories behind the stories on the topics you want to learn more about. Because there's always more, so there'll always be Vermontitude. Hosted by me, Peter Fish Case. Welcome to Vermontitude. New episodes drop every Tuesday and can be found by going to Vermontitude.com, Reformer.com, Brattleboro.tv, and locally on Comcast Channel 1078. We come to you from our studios at the Innovation Box on Landmark Hill. I'm Peter Fish Case, and each week I cover the topics that are of concern to Windham County and the towns that reside within its borders. Joining Vermontitude today is Ryan McLaren. He is running to be our next lieutenant governor. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Peter.
All right. So we had plenty of opportunity to chat before we started recording here, but let's recap some of this. I'm going to start with sort of maybe a softball, maybe a hard question.
Sure.
Like, why do you want this job?
Well, that's a question you should ask. Yeah. Everyone asks that question. And I'm running for lieutenant governor because people are desperate for change. And we need something to change in Montpelier, solve some of the first order problems that people are facing day in and day out. It's too expensive to buy a house. People are worried if they can find a job to pay for the home that they can find nearby. And they're worried that they might not have a school or a hospital to send their kids to when they're sick. So, I've spent the last 10 years of my life working for Peter Welch. My job has been to travel around Vermont and talk to Vermonters about what's going on in their lives and to make sure that they see a small piece of what their lived experiences in Peter's work in DC. And that's really the opportunity in this role for me as lieutenant governor. It's an extension of the work I've done my entire career, which is try and make sure that people making decisions in whether it's in Washington or in the State House understand what's really happening in people's lives and to be an advocate for them in the legislative process to make sure that when we're talking about issues, we're talking about the issues that matter most to people. And that's really boils down to how hard it is to live in Vermont right now. We're the third most expensive state in the country to raise a family. Our healthcare costs have doubled in the last 10 years. Housing costs have gone up 70%. So unless we tackle some of those problems, the future looks bleak.
So we had the opportunity to sort of discuss how sometimes that national narrative can fall down onto local town politics, county politics, so statewide politics. I mean, are you guys? I mean, you right now are sort of dealing at a federal level at your current position with Senator Welch, but now you've got to kind of bring that back home. How do you do that?
That's part of the exciting part for me, honestly, where so much of our national discourse is both terrifying with the current administration doing unlawful things, but it's been poisoned and it's unproductive. And so what motivates me is the sense that we actually do have power. And the only way to really combat what's happening nationally is to turn inward a little bit and focus locally on what the things we can control close to home and to try and make life better for our neighbors and our families. And so there's a real sense of agency in that, I think, where, whether Donald Trump were the president today or not, it would still be too expensive to own a home in Vermont. It would still be there'd be too few kids in our schools.
Right.
And there'd be too few opportunities for kids like me, whose parents didn't go to college, was raised in a 900 square foot house in Essex. And for the purpose of my parents wanted to send us to college.
Right.
Give us an opportunity they didn't have. And they figured it out. They made it work. They were able to buy a home and scrape by. They had healthcare through Dr. Dinosaur that when Howard Dean was governor.
Right.
We were raised on government cheese and WIC. And I had the opportunity to go to a great school along with my brother and my sister and make it work. But that opportunity for a kid like me growing up today is nearly impossible.
Right.
And it's that sense that we can't, if we work hard, you can get ahead. We've lost it in communities all over Vermont. People are working hard and either scraping by or not scraping by. and it's got to change. And so that's a lot of the motivation for me.
One of the things that you had mentioned to me while we were discussing, which I often, because like the lieutenant governor job is like this sort of a strange position. Yeah. Maybe it's like this in every state. I don't know, but it's just sort of like, hey, we elected him. And then like 4 months later, it's a forgotten position. Right. But you sort of called yourself a lobbyist for Vermonters in that position.
Yeah. You get to be an advocate. Like, it doesn't have necessarily institutional power. I don't get to vote on all the bills that come through. Mm-hmm. I get to break a tie, which is important. Yeah. If something happened to the governor, you would step into that role. And it's important to note that I think I'm the most experienced person in that capacity running in this race, and for a long time, actually, given what I've accomplished in my career. But the meat of the job to me is outside of Montpelier. It's not in the State House, actually. Right. It's out in communities, making sure that people have a sense that they can trust their voice is being heard in that building on a statewide level. And I've spent the last 10 years of my life doing that for Peter Welch here in Vermont, traveling around Vermont, talking to teachers, farmers, cops, firefighters, everybody, anyone, to make sure that that the work that Peter does in DC is rooted in someone's life here in Vermont. And that if we're successful, it means their lives have changed for the better. And we need to rebuild that trust in what's happening in Montpelier. And I think I can do that. And that's the opportunity in this role. I don't get a vote, but I get a megaphone. And I want to take that around Vermont and actually hand it to other people, because what they think and how they feel and what their lives look like matters most.
Yeah, no, it is. It's interesting when you boil it right down to it. Everybody wants the same thing, right? They want to be safe, they want to be housed, and they want to be able to afford their lives. Yeah, right. And I think I was reading an article where I think the state of Vermont, I don't remember where I read it, but lost something like 1,800 citizens. Last year. Yes. And that's sort of a trend, and that's up, I think, 2.5 times from the previous year. Yeah. I mean, how do you stop that kind of attrition?
Right. I think first and foremost, the most expensive thing in anyone's life, especially if you're a young family, you're 30 years old and trying to have a kid, is where can you live? Right. We do not have enough housing. We don't have enough in terms of volume, and we certainly don't have enough in terms of accessible, affordable housing for people. And so, of course, we're losing our population has flatlined for a long time and has started to tick down post-COVID. And that's a result of how expensive it is to live here. It's the third most expensive state in the country to raise a child, almost $40,000 a year to raise one child for a family of 3. And it's way more expensive than California, for example. Mm-hmm. And that's a recipe for a slow and painful death for our state, unless the future of our state that you want is Vermont becoming a theme park, essentially, where people can pay with means, can pay to either come here or live here and enjoy the quaint, beautiful nature. And there's an underclass that's designed to serve them, but no one in between. If you want to just live and work and raise a family in Vermont, it's going to be impossible. I have 2 daughters. They're 5 and 2. And, it worries me. Like, can they make a life here the way I did when they're grown up? Or will they have to leave to find opportunity? Yeah. Because, I'm not well off. I'm like middle-class kid. Grew up here to live a middle-class life. And that life feels harder and harder every day for folks. So we're losing that demographic. The people that are here are either stuck or they have the means to stay here because they're independently wealthy or, are doing pretty well.
So the state of Vermont is with the governor and the lieutenant governor race. It until last year sort of was always sort of like one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, which is always sort of an interesting. You don't run as a ticket. Nope. I think this is the first year that I can recall, and I'm sure it's happened. I just can't recall it with John Rogers and Phil Scott both being from the Republican Party. Do you feel that having 2 different parties kind of walking towards the common good is a better thing than just one common thought?
I do in general. And I think Vermonters do. It's like we still live in a place where the national political discourse has not infected our politics entirely. It's trickling down in ways that you can feel and is often unproductive, but it also hasn't really succeeded. I mean, Governor Scott is one of the most popular politicians in the country as a Republican in a blue state. And that doesn't happen in places that are larger than Vermont. It still have this like we're a small state. So it feels like, we're the size of Nashville basically. And so our politics are still extremely local and extremely pragmatic, which takes a lot of the ideology out of the conversation in ways that I think is Vermonters expect and is more productive. Like I'm committed to outcomes and not ideologies.
Right.
What is more important to me than whether it's a, Republican idea or a Democratic idea, or red team, blue team stuff.
Right.
That doesn't matter as much as like, can we build enough housing for people to live here? Can we fill our schools with children?
Right.
Can we keep rural hospitals open? So if you want to have a baby somewhere in like Guilford or Reedsboro, there's a place for you to go.
Right.
That is not, those conversations really aren't all that political in the end. And there's problems we can solve if we put down some of the
rhetoric.
Rhetoric or preconceived notions about who's good and who's bad or whatever.
Good. Ryan, tell us, what's the number one thing you want people to know about you as a person?
I won't quit.
Okay.
I've spent my entire adult life in public service with Governor Shumlin, with Peter Welch, on school boards. I was an AmeriCorps member. I served on the State AmeriCorps Commission to give out AmeriCorps grants to state organizations. And, it hasn't always been in front of the camera the way I am right now. But I have almost a 2-decade career in Vermont of getting things done for my community locally, at the state level, and at the federal level. And in that time, halfway through my career, I broke my back skiing in an accident. I was paralyzed from the waist down. And, more than anything, it's given me a sense that we don't get to choose always the circumstances we live in or what happens in the world around us or even to us. I didn't get to choose. It just happened. Things happen. It was an accident. And, but what we do get to choose is how we face the day, what we do to respond to the world. And Peter Welch says this a lot, and it's something that helped get me through, but we can pull the cover over our eyes essentially and wait for a miracle to happen, or you get up and you get out of bed and you face the day. And in my time working for Peter, traveling around Vermont, I've never felt a greater sense of uncertainty in communities all over Vermont, in families, a sense of fear and anxiety about what the future holds. And what motivates me to run right now is to make sure we don't give in to that fear and anxiety and stop trying. Because the only way to fail is if we quit, if we stop trying.
Right.
And there's hope in the trying.
Right.
Getting up and doing the little thing you can do today to make your life better, to make your neighbor's life better, to make our politics better. That snowballs. And it's a really important moment for Vermont. We're on the precipice of something, and I really want it to be the precipice of a future that is abundant and affluent and, wonderful for my kids.
Right.
And for people that are raising a family in Vermont today. And we just have to commit to go and do it. And so I'm not going to give up on that.
Where do they find out? Where does somebody find out more about
McLarenforvermont.com. We're on all the social media as McLaren for Vermont. And we'd love to see you there.
All right. Ryan, thank you. Good luck with your campaign.
Thank you.
To that don't quit thing. Ryan had mentioned that he was paralyzed. I think it's worth noting that he walked in here. So if you're wondering if the guy quits, it doesn't seem like he does. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Peter.